This episode is brought to you by the Vail Wine Classic. Head up to the mountains for this beautiful celebration of international wines and spirits, as well as Colorado's home favorites like Carboy Winery, Outer Range Brewing, and Woody Creek Distillers. Going down August 6th through the 8th, this big wine event features programming such as sommelier-led wine hikes, paired lunches and dinners at Vail's top restaurants, and an exclusive sunset showcase called Best of Fest, featuring 90-plus rated wines overlooking the Gore Range. Ticket prices go up as it gets closer to August, but you can save money right now by buying sooner. Just use code CITYCAST at checkout for $10 off. For tickets and a full schedule, visit vailwineclassic.com. And don't forget to use code CITYCAST for $10 off. This episode is brought to you by Denver Bike Fest. Check out Denver Bike Fest Saturday, June 13th from 3 to 9 p.m. at York Street Yards. This free, all-ages celebration of Denver's bike community brings you live music from Boys with Blue, Modern, and Yugs. Plus, drinks from Cohesion Brewing, 8 food vendors, and 50-plus bike partners offering demos, workshops, games, and so much more. Roll up to the fest and take advantage of the free bicycle valet from Z Cycle Shop. Oh, did I mention we will be there? Come hang out with CityCast Denver as we keep the fun rolling on the main stage. Learn more about the celebration and sign up to volunteer at denverbikefest.app. That's denverbikefest.app. Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Today, I'm sitting down with one of the Democratic candidates in the race to be Colorado's next governor, Attorney General Phil Weiser. Welcome back to CityCast Denver.
I feel like I was just with you guys, but that was January 2025.
Oh my gosh, so it's been a year and a half?
Well, you replayed it. You replayed it a year later,
yes,
and it actually held up really well. I was
You're impressed. Well, we may circle back on some of the stuff we actually talked about. But my first question, say you get elected, Phil. What is the first thing you do on your first day in office as governor?
To change the culture of state government. I am a big believer.
That's a big first.
Isn't it a big first? But I'm a big believer that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And for me to get the range of issues that I have on my ambitious agenda done, changing the culture is literally the first job in front of me. And too often government is like siloed. It's on inertia, doing the same old, same old. It's not listening to people. I really want to change all that. Setting core values that we are here to serve the people. We are going to make it our business to take on the problems that people are feeling. And we're going to be creative in how we do it.
What's one of those core values, or what is that thing in the culture that you want to change so much?
There are so many aspects of how our state government is operating because we've always done things this way. It's easy and it's hurting us. I'm going to give you one of the examples that is very motivating to me. When someone leaves prison, there's a 45% chance in Colorado they're coming back to prison within 3 years. This gets called the recidivism rate.
Sure.
The national average is 37%. So Colorado has 8% people coming back more than the average state. And that's because our ability to prepare people to re-enter society is way subpar. Right now, we've got a shortage of correctional officers. We've taken people from caseworkers, we're putting them correctional officers, and we're not doing a good enough job of studying what programs behind the walls work help people re-enter society. Bree, I'm going to go way back on our prior conversations about the opioid crisis.
Yes.
One of the things I've done on this is to give money to the Department of Corrections to stand up peer support programs behind the walls so people are going to be in recovery when they leave. And we're now training people behind the walls as certified peer counselors so they can leave and get a job. That's something I'm doing right now on the AG front as like a pilot project. I want to scale that up as governor.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because that actually is one of the things I want to ask you about is in 2022, you supported the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Bill, which made it a felony, so it was no longer a misdemeanor, to possess more than 1 gram of a substance containing fentanyl. In 2025, a study into the impacts of that bill found that it did not reduce overdose deaths. And in fact, recent data has shown us that while overdose deaths across the country went down for the most part, They went up in Colorado. Do you still think criminalization is the right approach to reducing overdose deaths?
There's so much here to talk about. Let me give my key principle. How do we punish drug dealers pushing dangerous drugs that are, in some cases, killing people? And how do we have compassion and treatment and recovery for those struggling with addiction? That's the basic line that I am seeking to advance. And my reason for pushing that bill was it was, under the prior law, too easy for people to have lots of fentanyl with them. They could get arrested and say, oh, it's just a misdemeanor, even though they were literally putting people's lives at risk. That same bill, Bree, you mentioned, had a provision that if you knowingly sell someone fentanyl and then they die, it is a felony for distribution of fentanyl resulting in death. And I've talked to parents who've lost their kids who really struggled, that it was hard to get any accountability for someone who knowingly put someone's life at stake. And a lot of times it is not being labeled as fentanyl. It's being labeled as Adderall or something else. So people are given these pills. They think they're real. They're not.
Well, I would push back and say, though, that I've talked to harm reduction advocates about this, and that Good Samaritan, there's the Good Samaritan law of you can call 911, but people, because of this bill, are often not calling 911 because they're worried if they were doing drugs with that person and they happen to be the person that had the drugs, they can end up incriminating themselves. And so they just don't call, and then overdose actually go up. Because that's the thing about this bill is even if it's penalizing drug dealers, which is a broad category, people are still dying.
Bria, you and I share the same goal, saving lives. And if I can get good evidence and basis to think we've got to change how we're doing things to change lives, I've got an open door on that. You mentioned harm reduction. I do want to mention something that we've been able to do with the funds we have, which is to make sure naloxone is freely and widely available. That's now possible in Colorado because of the money that I got from taking on big pharma that I was able to give towards a grant program. I agree with you. Every life matters. People are dying. We need to save lives. And the best harm reduction strategy I know about is making sure that naloxone is freely available. And this is important for the public to know. If you give someone naloxone, it can't harm them. But if they're in an overdose situation, it will save their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, let's move on to something a little bit more recent. Michael Bennett's campaign recently made a website attacking you for attending events paid for by large corporations. The website says, quote, corporations like Pfizer, Juul, Google, and Facebook, all of which were in active litigation with Weiser's office, paid in part for Weiser and other AGs to attend lavish events in Hawaii. What is your response to these allegations that can be found on this website called paytoplayphil.com?
When I was asked this question at the debate last night, I said, let me first take my jaw off the floor because these are jaw-dropping allegations. Let me count the ways this is so wrong and so cynical. First, these allegations are from a Republican right-wing dark money group. They were brought up during my reelection when I was running to be reelected as Attorney General. At that time, Michael Bennet literally stood by me, endorsed me, shrugged off those allegations. Now he's recycling them. Talk about BS politics for you. Number two, the conference that they're profiling, I was one of 27 AGs who went. I was the only AG there who paid my own way for my own flight, my own hotel. It's a conference put on by an organization that we're a member of. Anyone who goes to a conference think they're influencing me, they got another thing coming. Look at the companies I took on, from Purdue Pharma to the Kroger-Albertsons merger that we talked about before. I'm now taking on Live Nation Ticketmaster in court to break them up. I'm taking on Google. I'm taking on Meta for harming our kids. I will take on anyone who harms Colorado. And then finally, the most rich part of this, who's backing Michael Bennet in this campaign? A $7 million plus super PAC with out-of-state billionaires, corporations like insurance companies and Uber and dark money. For him to make these allegations, hypocrisy is not a strong enough word. It is gross. It's desperate. Voters aren't going to buy it.
I have another question sort of related to this from a listener. Jared R. asks, I want to know more from Weiser and Bennet about how they plan to combat big corporate money in politics.
Thank you for this assist because it flows perfectly. And I've tried to get this message out. I've written a Denver Post op-ed on this same point with Javier Mabry. When I'm governor, I've got a way to get corporate money out of politics. And I would call this a Citizens United hack. I usually thought we had to wait to get the Supreme Court composition changed, but here's the deal. Hawaii has already done this. In Colorado, we can change our corporation laws so that corporations are not authorized to spend money on elections. By withholding that authorization, we prevent any corporation from essentially trying to advance their agendas through their campaign spending, which I find offensive. I believe elections should be decided by people, not out-of-state billionaires, not corporations. When I'm governor, I've got a plan, I have a commitment to do something about it.
This episode is brought to you by the Regional Air Quality Council. Created from pollutants like car exhaust, ground-level ozone is the Colorado Front Range's biggest air quality issue and a leading cause of respiratory problems. But you can do something about it. Take simple steps for better air this summer by carpooling and combining car trips to save gas, or by taking the bus or light rail to get where you need to go instead of driving. And when you're parked in parking lots, at the trailhead, or when picking someone up, be sure to turn your car off and don't let the car idle with the AC on. But hey, why not get out of your car altogether? Walk, bike, or scoot shorter distances, or maybe try one of those cool new black and turquoise Vio bikes and scooters that are popping up all around town. And did you know there's still a $225 state rebate on e-bikes? And the city of Denver also has its e-bike rebate opening again on July 7th. Want to know when it matters most to take these steps? Sign up for summer ozone alerts by texting Better Air CO to 21000, or sign up for emails at the Simple Steps Better Air website. Learn more ways to help improve our air quality on the Colorado Front Range at simplestepsbetterair.org. That's simplestepsbetterair.org. This episode is brought to you by Energy Outreach Colorado. Energy Outreach Colorado is a statewide nonprofit helping income-qualified Coloradans pay their energy bills. If you're having to make tough choices like paying utilities or putting food on the table, Energy Outreach Colorado is here to help and ease that burden. Programs range from utility bill assistance to emergency furnace repair to community solar and energy efficiency work. So what does that look like in practice? Well, Energy Outreach Colorado's crisis services keep electricity, gas, and heat running with immediate bill pay assistance. But they also focus on the long term by investing in energy efficiency, electrification, and affordability solutions like community solar, all to help prevent future financial risks for families and neighbors who need it most. Learn how Energy Outreach Colorado is creating affordable energy solutions for Coloradans at energyoutreach.org. That's energyoutreach.org. So you've been Attorney General, you were a law professor, you clerked for Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she was on the Supreme Court, you worked in the DOJ under Clinton and Obama, but I don't see legislation on your resume. What's your experience working on trying to pass new laws?
As Attorney General, I have advanced over 60 pieces of legislation that we have worked to pass, making it essentially harder for companies to get away with BS tactics, whether it's mega mergers, we update our antitrust laws. Whether it's preying on consumers, we update our consumer protection laws. Whether it's advancing public safety by making sure that we have more trust in law enforcement and that we're decertifying law enforcement who are untrustworthy. We've worked hard on issues from water to how do we manage as a state to address the youth mental health crisis, keeping phones out of schools. I have a strong track record working with the legislature. That's why I've got more legislators, current and former, who've endorsed me than have endorsed Michael Bennet. They know that I know how to work with the legislature and get things done and do it the right way.
How would you do it, though? I guess that would be my question is like, okay, so you've done it in a certain capacity through your other work, but this is a whole different job.
What I would say is if you're looking at the experience that I have as Attorney General, you are right. It is a step up to be a governor, but literally almost every area of the responsibility of a governor, all the different subject matter areas, running a big department. I've got over 700 people who work for me, working with the legislature, working with local governments. I'm doing all of that right now. So yes, this is a step up for me and I'm ready for it. That's why 4 current attorneys general who are currently now governors from Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Massachusetts, and Washington have endorsed me to be Colorado's next governor. Senator Bennet doesn't have the experiences I have. He's not ready to take this job on day one, and he doesn't have any endorsements for any current governors.
What do you think about Polis's approach right now? I mean, he's gotten a lot of flack for vetoing a lot of bills in the past few years in office, especially this session. And I think he even was like, I have a special pen for all my vetoes. What do you think about that approach to governing?
I mentioned earlier working with the legislature the right way. Here's what that looks like, Bree. When someone comes with an idea, I want the conversation to start with, explain to me what you're concerned about, what you're trying to accomplish. Let's figure out the best way to do it together. Last year, for example, one of the state reps had a horrendous sexual assault that was in an Uber and said, we need more safety. And that ended up getting vetoed last year. And the governor hadn't had the conversation I just mentioned. I think something like it is now passed this year.
Yes.
But here's my point. We could have passed it last year by doing it the right way. And whenever you look at the bills I've worked on, they've been done in that spirit, starting with listening, working on collaborative problem solving. We've got a range of important issues. Social media and young people is one that he's vetoed bills that, again, I can't understand. Another bill he just vetoed that would have been enabling us to hold ICE accountable. I am committed to leading by listening and to being a collaborative problem solver.
Do you think Polis is wrong in this approach?
I think that the failure to work together to get good things done is always a worse strategy than let's come together. Let's work together. And I want to tell you, I've learned this from Roy Romer, who has a saying that's so on point.
Former governor, yes.
Yes, Governor Roy Romer, who nominated me, Bree, 97 years old, he nominated me at the, I think Paul was there, the Democratic Party State Assembly. And Roy is as sharp as ever. And what Roy teaches me is all truth is partial, which means when a member of the legislature, Democrat or Republican, says, I've got an idea, something I'm concerned about, my first response is, tell me more. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? And I believe in that listening. I believe in that dialogue. I believe in that collaborative problem solving. That's going to be my approach.
So I have another question about Polis sort of going the other direction. Last year, several cities and towns in Colorado actually sued Governor Polis and the state over his sweeping land use and zoning regulations, saying his executive order was unconstitutional and overrode their authority as home rule municipalities. I mean, this is part of this bigger approach, again, to from Polis's perspective, to address growth, address affordability issues, address density. And I wonder, do you think that if this was the pushback from these municipalities, was this the right move by Polis?
There are some important principles that have been pushed to the state level, getting rid of parking minimums, ADUs as of right. And at the same time, I understand your point, and I have heard from local governments the same thing, which is, don't treat us like we're stupid. Don't essentially freeze us out. Instead, invite us in. And I do have that as my governing philosophy. And I would mention, we talked about the opioid crisis before. Look at the way I've led in that context. What I did is we took the money we had, $900 million, and then I said to local governments, how do we create the best strategy? And I really listened. We ended up with a number of different regions. 90% of the money goes to the regional and local level. Every dollar is transparent. Every dollar has to address the crisis. It can't backfill existing funds. And once a year, we get together in a conference to learn from one another. And we've been making real progress. And this opioid response is widely praised. John Oliver called it the gold standard. Johns Hopkins School of Public Health also said it was the best in the nation. That's the model for housing. I say to everybody, we have a common goal, just like the opioid epidemic. Common goal, save lives. Housing, common goal, every teacher should be able to afford to live in their community. We should have starter homes that they can buy. Right now, that's not the case. I set that goal. I bring them in and say, how do we do this? How do we start building more starter homes? How about we lower the permitting fees for starter homes and have higher permitting fees for mega mansions than starter homes? How about we make the permitting approval times as quick as possible? How about we look into innovations like modular homes? Creating that culture that we're in this work together and that we're advancing a shared goal, I believe gets stuff done quicker.
So I have another question from a listener. This was sent in by John S. John asks, I would like to know how both gubernatorial candidates feel about the most recent plans from CDOT's I'm sorry. I would like to know how both gubernatorial candidates feel about the most recent CDOT 10-year plan. CDOT's plans to allocate the largest portion of its budget towards highway expansion at the expense of road repair and multimodal transit. If an organization's budget is a proxy for its true priorities, how would you explain the contradiction between CDOT's proposed budget and the state's stated transit and climate goals?
I do believe we have to do both these two things, that roads and highways are going to continue to matter. Paul reported on this after the YIMBY forum where people didn't want to hear me say we need to expand Pena Boulevard. I understand that as an objection, but here's my answer. I also want to expand bus service to the airport. I also want to get more train usage to the airport. I'm open to other ideas. Really, this should not be pitting these two against each other. We're going to have a multimodal transit system, and we need to drive forward our climate goals. That means more EVs. Colorado last year had the second highest rate of EV adoption in the nation. I'm proud of that. We also have to continue to recognize we're not going to push everybody into one model. We need to create a range of models and continue to improve.
I mean, I would say critics of highway expansions in the 21st century would say, well, this is just a continuation of climate change issues, and there's impacts on lower income communities and communities of color. I think we can look here in Colorado to the last expansion of I-70, which directly impacted the Globeville area, Swansea area, where there was one family that lost their homes twice over the last couple of decades to this expansion. Not to mention, this is one of the most polluted zip codes. At one point, it was one of the most polluted zip codes in the country. So what do you say to folks that say there just is not a way to expand a highway and meet those climate goals and not further marginalize communities?
I want to start with the point you mentioned about that family. I care deeply that whatever we're doing, we are starting by listening to the affected community. This is obviously one of the lessons of the Colfax construction is going on right now. I've heard from small businesses, they didn't understand what was happening. They didn't have input into what was happening, and they feel mistreated. We can't allow that. And I mentioned at the start about the culture of state government. That's a phenomenal example. I want a culture that we start by listening. I don't want to hear afterwards that a community said, hey, you didn't ask me first. You didn't listen to me. You're not transparent with me. That's not okay with me. So there's a point you made that I want to double down on. There's a right way and a wrong way for government to operate. As for whether maintaining, expanding highways is ever sound, I do think there can be times when it's sound, it's necessary. And that doesn't take away from my commitment to looking for public transit solutions. It doesn't take away from my belief that we're doing a transition to electric vehicles that Colorado is a leader in. And we need to continue to be creative. I do think there's some promising rail options that are emerging that I'm excited to make work. We're in the middle of a conversation about how RTD can improve and do its mission better. We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
I'm glad you brought up BRT because, again, this is a hyper Denver issue for sure. But I mean, I have to be honest with you, before I worked in this job for CityCast Denver, I worked in urban planning and I worked directly with some of the folks that were doing outreach for BRT. And that was 10 years ago. So these conversations had been happening. I guess my question for you would be, we've got BRT projects potentially coming here, or planned for Federal Boulevard, Alameda, and I think most recently Colorado Boulevard as well. What do you think could have been done differently with Colfax to address those business owners' issues beyond this? I didn't know about the project. I mean, because that conversation only goes so far. What else do you think could have been done differently with BRT?
Brie, I don't have an answer right now what the alternative universe would have looked like, but I have a philosophy that very often by taking some time and listening and reflecting, there are other ways to do things. And one of the pitfalls in government sometimes is we get in these conversations, it's either this or that, and no one's listening to each other. But if you sat down and said, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your concerns? You might have the following conversation. What if we did it this way? What if we staged different parts of the project differently? What if we did sides of the roads differently? There's all sorts of questions that could be raised. My commitment is to work the problem and think from different angles to get to the best solution.
I have another question about transit. This one comes from a listener. Carrie asks, what are you going to do to make Colorado streets safer for vulnerable users such as pedestrians, cyclists, and scooters?
This came up at the YIMBY conversation, and I had the following idea. I think, Paul, and you talked about it, which is how do we make sure that we have call it transit fatality review process, and you could imagine it even injuries process, which is if we can review what's happening where, we can learn from it and we can keep people safer. To many issues, transit injuries, fatalities, domestic violence, gun violence, I bring a public health perspective, which means let's review the data. How are people getting harmed and what can we do to stop it? And to the extent any number of hazards that are happening are harming people in our roads, sidewalks, what have you, I want us to get the data and then come up with solutions that protect people.
Would you support the expansion of things like bike lanes? I mean, this is an infrastructure. Honestly, this is an infrastructure fight we see in many neighborhoods in Denver, folks that are very, very for it and folks that are very, very against it. Where do you stand on bike lane expansion?
I don't have what you might call a priori view that we have to always have bike lanes or we can never have bike lanes. I like the idea of bike lanes. What I really want to do is let's look at where we have them. How are they working? And what do we learn from that? And one of the opportunities in transit is to scale up what's working, like the Mustang service has been a successful, popular service. And then when we do things and they don't work, let's not scale those up. Let's look to pivot and try other things.
What else do you think RTD could do? I mean, the reform is in process. This has been a huge conversation for Denver ridership after the pandemic, all of these issues. What do you think? What's the thing you think RTD could do tomorrow that would improve service?
I mentioned this at that YIMBY forum as well. Public safety is also relevant to how people both live and get from place to place. And if people don't feel safe on RTD, and that is a deterrent to using RTD, we got to address that issue. And there's a lot of safety concerns in Denver where people feel that law enforcement is not present, is not responsive. And when people feel that way, it then can kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy where people are feeling it, they're sharing that concern, and others aren't doing it. So one of the concerns and questions that I think we need to look at for RTD is to what extent are public safety concerns an impediment and how do we address them?
I want to talk about another issue that is, it's nationwide. It's definitely an issue here in Colorado. It's something that Denver is dealing with directly, which is City Council recently passed a moratorium on data centers. And I think one City Council member, I don't remember who it was, basically said they were apologized for approving a data center in Globeville area, Swansea, which is now fully being built right now. If a bill came across your desk proposing a total ban on data centers, what would be your thought process behind this decision?
Bree, let me tell you why I don't go for that specific approach. I do share underlying concerns that lead me to three conditions. The first is I want to make sure that customers are never picking up the electricity costs. So we gotta make sure that is threshold condition one. Number two, we need to use clean energy to power any data centers. We cannot compromise on our climate goals. And number three, to this last point you mentioned, the community absolutely needs to be heard. If the community doesn't want it, it doesn't work, there's not water for it, or there's risk of pollution, we can't have data centers. That begs the very important question. Well, when would you have data centers? Here's the example, Bree. Craig, Colorado is closing down a coal plant. Despite Chris Wright's efforts to keep it open, we're going to close it. It's expensive.
He's Secretary of Energy, right?
Yes, Secretary of
And
Energy.
he's from Colorado.
Voted for him along with a bunch of other Trump picks. And he is a advocate of fossil fuels, advocate of keeping coal plants open. I believe we are and we should be closing these plants. Once we close that plant, I am concerned about the workers who are in that plant. If we have a data center in Craig, Colorado, powered by geothermal, a very promising energy source that works up there, it could be a real win-win. It's consistent with climate goals. We can get jobs for people losing coal plant positions that are part of what I'm calling, or others call, a just transition. So that's why I wouldn't say no data centers anywhere. Instead, I'd say my three conditions: electricity rates can't go up, has to be clean energy, has to work for the community.
I'd question, though, the jobs piece of this because, like, transitioning coal plant jobs, because I know one criticism of data centers is they claim to bring jobs to communities. And then what actually ends up happening is these are short-term jobs in the construction of the data center, but the actual operations of the data center don't supply long-term jobs for community members.
Yeah, the jobs I'm thinking about, Bree, are the geothermal power jobs, the energy
Okay.
jobs. You're
Okay.
right about construction. That's by definition temporary. My focus is the long-term geothermal. A geothermal plant is going to take people to operate. It's going to give people jobs. That's ongoing.
Related to this, this is an ongoing question that I feel like a lot of folks don't necessarily know the answer to. It's such a big, broad topic that impacts us in so many ways. What do you think is the right answer for how to regulate AI?
Honestly, Bree, we're going to need a whole other episode on this, but I'm gonna give you like a super quick answer. First and foremost, because it pains me so much, we didn't do anything about social media harming our kids for a decade. And look at the damage. 6 hours a day on these devices, largely on these social media apps, getting notifications and alerts all hours of the day and night. Young girls get twice as much self-harm content as other people. And the companies lied about it all. That's why I'm taking Meta to court in August, because of the harm that Instagram has done and Facebook has done. And we're investigating TikTok. So there's a generation's worth of harm from social media because we failed to do anything. AI chatbots, we're risking the same sorts of problems. Kids can ask an AI chatbot how to take their life or how to attack a school. And if the chatbot tells them how to do that or encourages them to do that, we have missed the mark on AI. So first, when you say, what do you do about AI? My first answer is, please, let's protect our kids. That's got to be job one. The second point is, I'm thinking a lot about the impact on our workforce and how do we make sure that when businesses are adopting AI, we're finding ways that we're protecting people's ability to have access to the workforce and we're not going to have mass layoffs or undermining young people having access to getting a job. And so that's something I'm looking at. And the challenge is AI is here, it's coming. We just have to figure out how we deal with that. And then third, and this is particularly important for government, let's be careful and mindful how we use technology. We've had a conversation recently about flock and flock cameras because we were installing and using these cameras, but we weren't asking the question, who has access to this information? What is the amount of time it's being stored or collected for? And we need to recognize that we're living in this information age where our information can be used in all sorts of ways. I want to make sure we have the right guardrails to protect us.
Phil, I have one last question. Do you plan to become besties with Matt Stone and Trey Parker, as Polis has? Because Casa Bonita is a key part of Colorado's identity here.
I mean, can we just acknowledge that South Park and Matt and Trey are like Colorado royalty? Yes, they're on my list of people to do everything I can to please to keep in our orbit. How about I'd add Nikola Jokic to that list? We got to keep him in Denver as a nugget. That'd be on my list too.
I am with you. I have a feeling he's not going anywhere because he clearly loves being here for work until he can go home. But I think that might be an easier call. But I don't know. Maybe you can ask Polis for Trey and Matt's phone numbers.
I'll work on that one. And we've got a lot of great musicians and artists that I want to celebrate. Sundance coming to Colorado is a chance to lift up our arts and cultural community. And I'm a big believer in the spirit of Colorado, that we care about one another, we root for one another. And so leaning into all the stars in our constellation is going to be on my agenda. And I appreciate the chance to be with you guys. It's always a pleasure.
Attorney General Phil Weiser, thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell former Governor Roy Romer about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.
One of my first interviews as a candidate was with you guys. I came in with a Pamplemousse LaCroix, to which Bree commented, And what was your go-to? We had a conversation about this.
Oh, because what's that? Oh, because he pulled it out of his pocket. I mean, that was like the number one.
With me, and I was like, my go-to.
It was a cool move, frankly, on your part to pull it out of your pocket. I was like, well, nobody can beat that. But no, I'm not a grapefruit person. I think I'm a lime lemon or
That's
a
the
lime
conversation
person.
we had.
Yeah.
I mentioned pamplemousse, and you said you're lime. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm just on regular water today. So.
And you have we had this discussion too. The hold cones from Trader Joe's.
Oh, you know it.
Yes.
You know it.
Yeah.
Still good. Still
Amen.
the best place for snacks, Phil.
Oh yeah.
Can I ask, did you have the LaCroix in the car intending to bring it up for the interview, or was it in the car and you were like,
I should drink this?
Oh, you mean right now, this moment?
Oh no, I meant back then when you pulled it out of your pocket.
I literally brought it with me because you asked how I keep my energy up. Hydration.
Sparkly
LaCroix
hydration.
and Big Gulp.
All right, this is all yours, Bree.
Okay.
I can tell you're ready, Phil.
I'm here for it.